realize that names are fucked up. Damn it.
Oh. Who knows who we are today?
Well, Sarah was Tanya.
It is April Fool's. I want to doing the whole everybody put your character into a bowl and everybody randomly pull and that's who you're playing is a fun April Fool's D&D thing. So we'll do that.
And Sekhmet is me now. Sekhmet is going to do the voice of now. Yeah, here she's talking.
There you go.
All right. So we're talking Star Trek, right?
We're going to talk Star Trek. I woke up from a nap for this, which is very on brand for me to wake up from a nap, talk about Star Trek, and then go back to sleep.
And then go back to a nap?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds fair.
Yeah.
So for those who haven't been keeping up, Annika and myself are currently, we just wrapped rehearsals for Sherwood Forest Fair, and the fair officially starts this coming weekend. And because that sucks up a lot of energy and time, especially our Sunday, we are dead Sunday evenings. We are not around for yes.
And Alyssa's also taking a break. Alyssa's also taking a break because Alyssa's not in the Star Trek one either. She's
That's right, and Alyssa's also taking a break.
Yeah.
So
she's got a lot of work stuff too. So Alyssa's like, I'm just taking a break.
I know it's fair. So in the meantime, there is a sort of mini campaign done in Star Trek Adventure. And Sarah is, I don't know where Sarah is in really. Oh wait, I'm Sarah or Sarah is me?
I fixed the names since then.
Okay.
Hi, I'm right here. I'm still Sarah.
Sarah is the storyteller. And Amelie is playing a character called Teslin. We'll probably talk about some of the others today. So I have questions because I got to watch one of our shows as of
First of all, the first thing I want to say is I want you to talk about the text that you sent about Adam. First of all, that's the first thing I want to talk about.
It's so funny. Every time you're like, Eiler, what do you do? He's like, what?
So Tanya's husband's last name is the same name as the first name of one of our PCs.
So watching the show
differently, but it's
very
exactly the same.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was very confused. Like, is it because we kept talking about the Rin and it kind of sounds no. Okay.
No,
it's Adam's husband's last name.
Yeah, and so Adam was also in the military for 6 years. So being referred to by his last name is like a totally different mental thing for him, and to constantly be hearing it was so funny. Because he was like, all right, it's freaking me out now. All right, so you did so this the episode number is 0.5.
0.5.
0.5. So it's not quite a session 0, but sort of a session 0.
This is our session 0 to work out the relationships and that sort of stuff. Yeah, the character stuff that we often do session 0s for. But come recording time, there had been a question of if everyone was going to be available to record. And then also this was a new system to, I think, 90% of us.
Yeah, well, 3/5. Because Ari and I have only played one shots with each other twice. So that's the amount of
I've played
familiarity.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's do a first episode, but also acknowledge that this is us going, what the hell are we doing?
So that's actually kind of exactly what I was going to ask. What do you think? So we've talked about the benefits of having session 0s for all sorts of gaming, right? For if you're starting a group, if you're in an established group but starting a new campaign. But this one is for the public. So I was curious your takeaway on the pros and cons of doing session 0s
For this one, session 0, this one, session 0 and our 0.5, both of them were really good because we're introducing a new cast member. We have a new person coming to play with us, and Janaya. So having her come in and basically meet everybody, literally see and talk and hear everybody it's really good. And also to introduce her to, of course, giving, all of the same thing, X cards, lines and veils, doing all that stuff. And then the actual session 0, not the 0.5. But also doing the session 0.5 was really good to get these folks who were fairly unfamiliar with the system, those practice rolls in of how it works. And they have a new complication thing called, threat and momentum and all this other stuff. So there's the things coming in that people are unfamiliar with. So getting that kind of out of the way of rolling 2d20s, and you can add extras, or you can, this, if you have a specific focus, that changes how your rolls are going to end up. Like just getting that stuff kind of out of that mechanical stuff out of the way before we started to get to the meat of the story. I am also going to spoil this a little bit. Session 1, our actual episode 1, when I was recording, I only got an hour.
Yeah.
We played for 2 hours. So there's an hour that you do not get. So we will be hopefully recapping that at the beginning of the next time we play, where we talk about what actually happened during that hour, because it was very entertaining.
Like Doctor Who, how there's like so much like just randomly lost content.
So I don't know why it only recorded for an hour, because it said stop recording, and I said that after 2. Anyway, it cut an hour of it, not 2. So anyway, sorry everybody.
Do you think there's any do you think there's any cons to doing it like publicly? Because I know, like for me, sometimes this was the balance, right? It's a new system, so I liked hearing people talk through the mechanics, because it's sort of like a way to learn it by, how when you're like, oh, we'll read the instructions, never mind, we'll just play it through a couple rounds and try to figure it out as we go, that you're kind of experiencing that second one. But on the other hand, it's kind of content that's a little like technical writing, right? So what were ways that you go on?
In this particular case, I wouldn't have done it any different.
Yeah.
It was a combination of, it was a new setup for so many of us, plus the way that our schedules ended up working out. It was the right thing to do. In the future, I think like the biggest con would be, possibly boring our viewers. Like Sarah does a really, really good job about making things interactive, not just for us as players, but also our viewers, and explaining things in a way that's both to the viewers and to us as the players. So I really want to thank Sarah for that.
I did like that. Yeah, everybody was like, all right, here's your practice roll. Here's the thing you're pretending to do.
Right.
Like, that. Yeah.
I think that a con could be is if you have a storyteller who is not comfortable being a teacher, then yeah, a session 0.5 like that could be get really bogged down in the weeds, as it were.
It could get very crunchy, very, very crunchy. And this also goes back to the fact that something that we have said in the 0.5 and session 1, we are throwing about 85% of the rules out of the window. Because I don't dislike them, but for the very, very, very specific and story-oriented game that we are playing, we don't need them, nor do I care about them.
Right. It's the Griffin McElroy approach of, did it get in the way of the story?
It is. We need the very basics, 2d20s, momentum, threat, focuses. Let's go. That's what we need.
Use that basic framework. It's kind of like, like having a stripped down version of it. So Star Trek. Were y'all already Star Trek fans?
I don't know if you can see this sticker right here. Probably not. But there is a sticker on my sticker board. The people in the stream can see it. The people that are watching probably can't, because I'm probably a square right now. But there is a sticker right there on my sticker board. It is a rainbow. And it is, in fact, the word queer written in Vulcan.
nerd. So that's a yes.
Let's see. More Star Trek. I'm planning on getting a Star Trek tattoo. I'm planning on getting the IDIC on my wrist. So, which stands for
I love the IDIC. Yeah.
Stands for Infinite Diversity and Infinite Combinations. Okay, we're gonna go way back here. I have been a literal Star Trek fan since I was in my mother's womb. How do I know this? I was born in August of 1984. Star Trek 3, Search for Spock, came out in June or July of 1984. Both of my parents and my older brothers were Star Trek fans. You better believe my parents and my older brothers were in that theater watching Star Trek 3 while I was still in my mom's belly. So when I talk about being a lifelong Star Trek fan, it is literally before I came out of my mom's body.
So, that's me with Star Wars.
So yeah, I was a Star Trek fan before this.
Huge even though I'm not in the game, when I was growing up, we had reruns of the original series. By the way, Bones has been my favorite, always is my favorite, always will be my favorite. You cannot change my mind. Okay, so
he is a grumpy Georgian man.
He is, and I love him. So that was all we had until I want to say I was in 6th grade when Next Generation came out, and the buzz was like nuts because we're like, it's coming back, but what's it going to be like? And the captain is so different, and the effects are going to be really different. Like, what are we going to have? And I remember very much liking it. My favorite episode of Next Generation is Measure of a Man, by the way, just for funsies. Fun facts. So yeah, I've watched like all of it, some of it multiple times. We used to have the board game, the Star Trek trivia board game.
I have multiple Star Trek board games.
Stuck in a rut, just answer Mud's women. For some reason, it is disproportionately an answer.
It's a good episode.
It is a good episode. Know why. So yeah, I love and appreciate Star Trek, and there's a lot of things about our current socio-political lives that can be reflected. This is when you know it's good science fiction, by the way, is when you can clearly see the reflection of real life in it. And I know that this was part of y'all's decision because it's not a Federation story. Right? No. So y'all who wants to take that?
You want to talk about it? Why we decided to not be Starfleet? I gave them 2 options. I said, you can be this or you can be this. Overwhelmingly, option 2 was chosen. Like, overwhelmingly.
Punch Nazis.
Punch space Nazis.
I mean, in this case, there's space Nazis, there's space fascists. So Sarah, to go back and answer your original question real quick. So I am one of those fans that, like, if you don't know Star Trek, I seem like an Uber fan. But if you're an Uber fan, I know nothing. So because like I love the concepts of Star Trek. I love the characters in Star Trek. I could not tell you what any of the episodes are named. No, doesn't happen. I don't hold on to information that way. And
that's okay. You can always go, the one with the
right, and that's what I do. I have not seen every single episode of every single series. I haven't watched Enterprise at all.
I haven't seen every single episode because I haven't watched season 3 of Discovery.
Yeah, and I want to. I plan to. I'm currently working my way through every single episode of Next Gen with David, and I want him to love Star Trek the way I love Star Trek. So I'm in the middle there, and I'm also really excited about this because yes, we are punching space fascists. The moment that Sarah was like, "Do y'all want to be ragtag group of Starfleet people, or do y'all want to be Maquis?" And I was like, Maquis, because I happen to know what the Maquis are. Again, I look like an Uber fan from the outside, because it is I see an opportunity to tell my story as someone who has been a fairly involved resistor throughout the last 5 years. And, I didn't mean to become a resistor, and I did. I don't know. I don't know if I've brought this up before, either in the group or or on the OOC. I've been arrested for protesting before, and it's something that I think is a slightly unique thing that I bring to this story, that I know the consequences of fighting back. And so when Sarah suggested the Maquis, I immediately felt resonance with it. I immediately was just like, no, this is the story that I want to tell. And yeah, I pushed hard for it. I don't know if everyone else was as excited about doing a Maquis storyline as I am, because I was just immediately like, no, this is the story that I want to do. This is the character that I want to do. I was all in 5,000%.
Do you want to?
So the Maquis, for people who do not know, does anybody want to give what's the short version? Basically,
the short version is the short version of the Maquis is there were Federation colonists that colonized an area, and they were mostly from the Federation, mostly. And then the Federation and the Cardassian Alliance sign a peace treaty in which the area is given to the Cardassians. It's called the demilitarized zone. And those Cardassians are saying, hey, you have to get off this area that you've been living in for 100 years or more. And so they're getting kicked out of where they lived. And these people are like, no. And so they are fighting against space fascists. That's the short story of the Maquis.
And then a lot of people join the Maquis because basically for those not as familiar with Star Trek, right? You have the Federation, and the Federation is kind of that liberal utopian idea where everything within these bounds is wonderful and perfect, and everybody's protected, and we prioritize science and all this kind of stuff. But there's people outside of that, and this can be metaphorical because those people outside can certainly be inside, that are not getting to experience those things. And so the Maquis often become part of, they're coming from different backgrounds, and kind of fighting on that fringe.
Well, that's what we also see in some of this. We're going to see in some of this is we have two people who were former Bajoran resistance fighters,
right,
who so they were like, okay, well, because the occupation ends and all this stuff, and these people that really still hate Cardassians are like, oh, another chance to fight Cardassians. Fuck yeah, we're going to join the Maquis. Right. It's just like we're here.
Other people join it for reasons that the Federation is not meeting everybody's needs, whether they think it or not. And so lots of people come to the Maquis for different reasons. And I think that's as Amelie stated, not so thinly veiled. So it is, I think, easy for people to picture themselves being in a resistance or being a resistor when there is a power structure in place that is obviously against them, right? But then if you have a power change, for instance, that seems like it's going in the right direction, but it's not there, all these problems still exist, that being a resistor becomes an awkward place to be, right? Because people are like, well, what do you fight? Now you're just fighting to be fighting. And that was kind of that's kind of what the Maquis were in the storylines in Star Trek, is that because there actually is something to still be fighting either against or for or both. And so the choice to do that, I thought was really good. Do you guys want to, political catharsis through gaming?
Yeah. like I've never done that before. So the idea also behind the Maquis is it's kind of that Steve Rogers idea that Steve Rogers fights against bullies no matter who the bullies are. The Maquis are going to fight against colonizers no matter who the colonizers are. Yep. They have established themselves on, and these planets were unpersoned planets. There was no sentient life form on these planets. So they weren't like, they weren't colonizers. They were people making colonies, but they weren't taking over native culture or anything. But then they had been established for 300, 200, 100 years. So they had towns and villages, and they had
their own cultures. Yeah.
They had their own cultures. And then they have to come in and basically get wiped out. So it's the anti-colonizer thing that we're kind of talking about, that we kind of do. And it's something we've even talked about. I don't remember if we talked about it in session 0.5, or we've talked about it definitely on our text chat, is of you don't steal from mom and pop stores, you steal from Walmart. And the Federation is Walmart.
Yeah.
The Federation is Walmart in this
scenario. I think it's important to note that the Maquis are labeled as traitors by the Federation, and they are labeled as terrorists by the Cardassians. And that's that line that I was talking about, that they're basically freedom fighters. But the supposed cultured Federation cannot see the problem because everything is just, two rose-colored glasses. And of course, the colonizers don't want somebody interrupting their colonizing. And so they throw on the label terrorist. So tell us about you want to go?
Yeah.
The
way that I ended up building my character was with a lot of that struggle between liberal and leftist in mind. So Teslan, I made Teslan on purpose a trans story. And in addition to that, I also made him being a radicalized liberal, being radicalized into leftist.
Teslan is a Trill host. So for people who didn't actually see it, and you're getting spoilers, so.
So Teslan has both this story of integrating both female and male lifetimes into his experience. And also, he's also going through actively the process of, okay, I know that, I want to be here. I want to be in this movement. And also a lifetime of trusting the Federation to have done what is right. And knowing for sure in his heart that he has to go against what this is. And so he's got a lot of internal struggle, and I hope that I do justice to this internal struggle on screen, because it is so good.
So that brings me to my next question, because I know that you guys have a lot planned, and y'all don't have to spoil anything, but there's only going to be 5 episodes of this mini campaign. So how are you expecting to tackle these big concepts that you have in a short little arc?
I think the first thing is, because if you watch the first half of episode 1, whenever that comes out.
Sarah, I do want to interrupt you. Interrupt you. Sarah was recording, doing the official thing for the very first time, and technical issues happen. Sarah has been very open and upfront about the fact that she's not the tech person on our team. And so I think that it's important to say out loud right now that we are not holding Sarah accountable to this. We
don't hold Annika.
Right.
Tech shit happens. It happens to everybody.
I'm just so because the second half is so good.
Yes.
The second half, there's so much interpersonal stuff that happens, and it's so good.
All right. On the OOC. That's what we'll talk about. The second half.
Okay. Well, I was going to say how we are tackling this kind of dilemma that, stuff is how we're getting this on the air is essentially they're going to go steal stuff from the Federation. And it goes, so that was our way of not Starfleet necessarily, but from the Federation. It's a Federation outpost they're going to. So that goes to the stealing from Walmart, not from the mom and pop stores. You know, and so that way they're going to be dealing with Federation policies, Federation members, the Federation, you know, all of that stuff, but they themselves are not members of that group. But that's our way of getting that in there and kind of seeing where the conflict stems from and where what the Federation, you know, utopian society outpost looks like versus the Ren itself, what it looks like, literally what it looks like as a ship, because it's so cobbled together and engineered pieces and, you know, all that stuff. So kind of seeing that difference, just like in the most stark of terms, like literal going, holding a mirror to the Federation and to the Maquis, and what, you know, what things are like materially is going to be one thing that's very, very much a way of going, now you understand.
Yeah, and it's a very good juxtaposition of, yes, we come from a background of wanting to punch space fascists, or punch fascists, and we're punching space fascists in this case. And also, what do you do when the space fascist is representative of where you come from?
This is big and deep. I'm excited. I'm excited to watch. I'm sad I'm not getting to be a part of it, but also excited to watch.
Can you tell that our favorite series in Star Trek is DS9?
I mean, because if we want to talk about favorite Star, I will talk about Deep Space Nine for like 5 hours straight.
I totally missed it. You dropped out. I totally missed it.
For most of us in the show, at least Amelie and I, it's very much our favorite Star Trek series is Deep Space Nine.
Oh, Deep Space Nine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just heard my favorite Star Trek is, and then it was nothing, and so I was like,
oh.
This is killing me. But I'm also very much not shocked.
Yeah.
It makes sense, because that series in particular deals with so much cultural subtleties when it comes to like
it literally deals with terrorism. It literally deals with I cannot recommend watching the Deep Space Nine documentary that came out a few years ago enough. It is very, very good. I will talk about it for like real quick here. It's called What We Left Behind. And one thing they talk about, they talk about the religious, because the Bajorans are extraordinarily religious people, and about religious symbolism with Cisco. They talk about terrorism. They literally talk about Kira being a terrorist. They talk about Cardassians and stuff. And this is the important thing that I think that really gets addressed in this documentary, is they talk about, so they're basically like, they're in the editing room, and the producer is like they're doing a checklist, and they go to the checklist of queer issues, and they check it off, and the producer, this is a meta thing, and he goes, no, take that off. We did not address queer issues enough or correctly. He said, if we had done what we had needed to do and what we should have done, Garrick would have been queer from day one, and it would have been explicit.
Yeah.
And he literally says that in the documentary. He said, we did not do what we should have done and talked about with queer issues. He was like, it was the 90s. There was stuff we wanted to do, like all this other stuff. He said, we did not have the guts to do it. We did not have the guts to say, yes, Garrick is gay or queer or bi or whatever it is, and just have him be queer. The only thing they talk about is there's that one episode. It's like, everybody's like, but Dax and Dax's former wife. I'm like, don't with me on this. Do not with me on this. And then, like, of course, the Klingons going, Curzon, my old friend. And she's like, Jadzia. And he's like, Jadzia, my old friend. And it's become a meme of Klingons, right. You know, say trans rights. Klingons just say, as long as you have honor, you know, kind of thing. So, and they literally talk about it. They're like, we did not do what we could have done with queer stuff. And I was like, as a queer person, I respect you saying that.
I absolutely do. And also, like, this was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And granted, I was a kid in the 90s. Like, I don't remember a lot of the 90s specifically. I do remember the early O's. and how difficult it was to be a cisgender queer person at the time, because that's who I thought I was. And as much as I respect them for saying, you know, we didn't push the envelope enough, it still was pushing the envelope. And I think that to discount what happened with Dax is it doesn't give enough credit to how much Dax, the character of Dax, did for trans rights and for queerness in general. I think that, you know, we tend to look at, you know, we say that hindsight is 2020. I think that discredits the choices that we have to make at the time.
I think it's interesting. So if people are unfamiliar with sort of the general cinematic philosophy that was going on behind the scenes of Star Trek, the original series did push a lot of boundaries, and today when we see them, we don't see that. Like, me seeing them when I was young did not have the same impact as my parents seeing them when they first came out.
When I talk about my parents being really big Star Trek fans, my mom literally talks about, like, that was what they did. Like, there were two shows on, like, one was before Star Trek or right after Star Trek. It was like 2 hours of programming on like a Thursday night or a Friday night or whatever it was, that she was like, I was there at my house in front of my screen watching it. And she would have been like preteen at the time, early like 11, 12. Same thing with my dad. And they didn't know each other yet, but they still, both of them were like, it was for them appointment viewing, literally in their small homes in East Texas, watching on their probably still black and white TVs, sitting there and watching Star Trek. They're like, it was. And then of course from then they watched the movies, and then my brothers and I, you know, got my brothers, and, you know, it's just steamrolled it.
Right. And then Next Generation came out, and there was all this concern about what they were going to do in this rebirth, right? And the biggest argument in the 90s, this might shock you, the biggest argument in the 90s from viewers is that the show didn't challenge society enough. That it was not the bold as brass pushing of the envelope that the original series felt like when it first came out. And so that was something that they were kind of up against. So the decision when Deep Space Nine came out was, well, we want to kind of rectify that a bit, right? We want to step forward a little bit more, but we were like,
they were hamstrung by the company, by Paramount, by everybody. They were like, we want to do this, and they said, no, you can't do that. They said, we want to do this, said, no, you can't do that. They have to think, because it was on syndication. It wasn't on a network. It was syndicated, and they were worried about ratings and the syndication and all that stuff.
And you got to remember, like, we're coming off of the AIDS epidemic, which was like,
because it came out
in communities, but also like it was a weird zeitgeist in the 90s. And so I think that they ultimately, because of production hamstringing and because of trying to make judgment calls, they pulled their punches again, just like they had ultimately done with Next Generation. And I think them going back and assessing that and being honest, that, because I think this is the thing that anybody who's like writing a book, right, doing a TV show, like, be honest. If you want to be that voice, if you want to be that beacon, it takes some, you know, is that you?
No, I just heard a
I got a notification on my phone.
Oh, okay. I was like, something's gonna explode. Hang on.
Well, I mean, Tanya, after you smelt the burning, I mean... Also, I just wanted to point out that earlier when Amelie got up, I had gotten up later and we both came back at the same time. And we were like in sync, sitting down. It was amazing. I just wanted to point that out because it looked real nice.
So I do think, so to go back, is I think that, and this is a thing that you can take as like a DM if you're like, if you are wanting to do this kind of campaign, that it takes a level of boldness to be like, this is what we're going to say. This is how we're going to say it. I said what I said. I'm not going to try and make this table comfortable.
Did I stutter?
Did I stutter? Right.
Right.
But on the other hand, I think Amelie is right that there are so many moments, and it's one of the reasons I think Star Trek is beloved, is there are so many moments across all of the franchises there that people got to see a reflection of themselves no matter who they were.
That's one thing that Star Trek always sort of did very well, as far as like the casting, is they always cast people of various cultures and ethnicities and religions and had them kind of represented.
Because out of the gate, that was the number one requirement, was that this crew, whatever this crew is, but originally this crew should look diverse. That was the number one out of the gate.
So, it's one of the things going back to the original series, like obviously casting. Oh, sorry.
Go on.
I was just gonna say that, like, I think that also, you know, when comparing the creators of Star Trek to what activists were doing on the ground, that's not really necessarily a fair comparison, because the Star Trek creators had something to lose, and that is having their show yanked off of television. And so activists on the ground, it is the Maquis versus what the Federation could do, you know, and it's a story of the difference between people with nothing left to lose. You know, we have nothing to lose but our chains. I believe that was James Baldwin. And versus, we really want to tell this story correctly, and we could lose being able to tell that story at all. And so I think that giving yourself that grace, I believe in holding yourself accountable, and also, you know, giving yourself that grace of saying, we made the best decision that we could have in that time. You know, should we have done better? Yes. Could we have done better?
Right. Yeah, that's hard to say.
Well, that's what. So first of all, I'm gonna talk about the casting real quick, and then I'm gonna talk about fan works, because that's technically what we are, is a fan work. Casting. Of course, the casting of Nichelle Nichols was this radical thing, and Whoopi Goldberg tells us a great story about watching her and saying, "Mom, she ain't no maid." Like, having this woman, she is Lieutenant Uhura. Thank you very much. She is a officer and on board. She knows her stuff. There's also the line where Sulu comes up and he's like, "I have you, fair maiden," and Nichelle Nichols as Uhura goes, "Thanks, neither," which implies of Uhura going, "Thank you, I'm black, and yes, I fuck." Like that line of, you know, going up. But we also have to think this is in the middle of the Red Scare, and this is like a generation after of literally one of the cast members being in an internment camp. So having both George Takei on cast, and then having Walter Koenig on cast, who is the son of Eastern European immigrants, and having him playing a Russian character. So you have people who are still dealing with the repercussions of Japanese internment, because George Takei was in one. And somebody whose parents immigrated from Eastern Europe, and they're still in the middle of the Red Scare. This is the 1960s. This is the middle of the Cold War. And so having these other two characters on here representing these two groups of people that in America at that time was still extraordinarily suspect. Like that was another bit of like casting, like mwah kind of thing that starting
off. And the fact that they go and full on reference it in Star Trek 4, the one with the whales.
The one with the whales. Nuclear vessels. Captain,
to add on top of that, I think that, if I recall correctly, Takei says that his sexuality was just an open secret on set.
Yes.
That, you know, everyone who bothered to look knew that he was gay.
Yeah.
And so that, like, any straight washing of him was intentional by other people. So to have that on set as well is that's important as well.
Yeah. So anyway, talking about the casting, and then you see that reflected in the subsequent series where you have the next generation. You've got people of various ethnicities, and you know, and then you have the XBs. You know, you have your characters that like represent certain, like Bajorans representing certain people on Earth without saying, you know, this. You know, you have and then Voyager. You know, you have Asian full, you know, Garrett Wang, and you know, you've got all this stuff going on. And then in Discovery, we finally get like queer actors playing queer characters, and they're explicitly queer, and they have husbands and wives. There's a non-binary character, you know, all this stuff. Discovery finally just said, we're Star Trek and we're doing it. And I'm like, okay, thank you. But what this one brings me back to, I want to talk about fan works. So this goes back to fandom versus canon, like fan canon and fanon versus canon. So Star Trek is this big open, and here's the other thing that I think is really important is Star Trek is explicitly written in Earth's future. It's not, as much as I like Star Wars, it's not in a galaxy a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It is explicitly Earth's future. It is saying this is what we can do if we, you know, this is somewhere we can get to. It's aspirational kind of as far as media goes. So having it be an aspirational series and having such a huge fan base, there has slash fan fiction. You can thank slash fan fiction because it is called slash fan fiction because slash Spock, and all of this was written by housewives in the 60s and 70s who wrote zines and mailed each other their fanfic. And so fight me. Not everybody on Screen Universe because we don't want to fight you. Others who are watching, I don't care. Fight me. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this. Women save Star Trek. Lucille Ball saved Star Trek. Thank you very much. So it's an aspirational show in that fact that it shows us in Earth's future, and then it's got this huge fan base who can see, even if their stories aren't directly told, can see themselves on screen and see themselves in these stories. So you have something that is kind of like this perfect microcosm for people to create fan works, because it's such an expansive universe. We don't know everything about the Maquis. We are told a little bit through stories, through the show, through comic books, through books, and we have that information. But we are never, so we have full reign to go off and do this because we don't know that much about the Maquis. We don't have full stories or whatever it is. And then there's all the fan works of like fan films and fan series and like, of course, fan fiction and fan art of like all of this stuff. And I think that Star Trek kind of as a medium was one of the big first ones that said, here is the sandbox that we created, go play in it. Amelie, Tanya, do you guys have anything you want to say about fan works and Star Trek and all that stuff?
I mean, just that it's similar to how we approached Rendenhurst in that, you know, we had a general outline of this is how the mechanics work, but we want to make our own story. So this is how this is what the Maquis are, and in canon, there's only so much that is told where and pretty much everything that is told about the Maquis is from a Federation point of view. So that's the other part. We are taking this from a Maquis point of view. We are the resistors who have been fighting, who don't have anything left to lose, and who do see the Federation / the US as this, you know, big, huge, bumbling, like, you could be doing so much more. And yeah, the part of fanon is being able to tell your own story within this world.
Or you know, just to elaborate, is that when you're doing fan fiction, you're not hobbled by producers, you know. So you can say, I see that seed that you had. I see that idea that you wanted, and this is where I'm going to take it and run with it because I feel connected to what to that sort of shadow, that ghost of a topic that you were broaching. Which is one of my favorite things just about fan fiction generally, and headcanons. So it's good. We're all on the phone now, y'all.
I just wanted to say, so with the when Sarah mentioned the the ladies passing fan fiction to each other, there's a convention in Houston. I don't know if it still happens or not.
Oh, yeah,
RevelCon.
RevelCon.
I've been there once because my mom's was a vendor there, and it is amazing to watch. Like, just all these ladies just doing their thing. It's amazing. It was so good.
Like, RevelCon is literally it is the spirit of fan fiction, because it is mostly
it's so good.
women just sharing fanfic with each other.
I think I was the youngest one there, so yeah.
And I'm not talking like older. I'm like my age. I'm 36. I'm talking like women in their 50s and 60s who have been watching Star Trek and these things for a very long time. And I'm like, yes, RevelCon, go get it, ladies.
It's amazing. If you ever think about going, you should. If I don't know when they're having it next, but it's amazing to I went just once and it was great.
It's one of those, and Sarah and I love to bring these up. These sort of secret histories of the geek world, where there's such a desire to look back on geekiness past and say that it's been
all cis-het white men.
Yep. And it just ain't true. And just because those stories, for whatever reason, became the stereotype and floated to the surface and took up more space than they deserved, doesn't mean that the other people did not exist and weren't making.
Like I said, Lucille Ball saved Star Trek, and that Lucille Ball, that Desert Lee Productions produced Star Trek, and they said, we're going to keep doing it. And Martin Luther King Jr. kept Nichelle Nichols on the show.
Yep.
Nichelle Nichols was going to leave, and Martin Luther King Jr. convinced her to stay on because of what she was doing, of what she represented to so many people, because he was a huge fan of the show. Right. So you're looking, and these are the original series. This is back in the 60s. So it's one of those things where it's like, you've got people, and I also cannot express this enough, how this is going to sound sort of weird, but both William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy were Jews. Mm-hmm. And this comes from Jewish mysticism. The whole thing with live long and prosper, right, comes from Shen and all this other stuff. So you have, not only do you have diversity in as far as look of ethnicity of where people are from, but there is an undercurrent of kind of religious kind of diversity stuff coming in here. Because Leonard Nimoy, again, was the son of Eastern European immigrants, So a lot of the original series cast were first or second generation Americans. And that's just, and they represent, and Nichelle Nichols' character, Uhura, is not from America. She's from Africa. Yeah. She's from somewhere in, I can't remember if it's East or West Africa, but somewhere in Sub-Saharan Africa. And that they talk that's just how it is. Anyway.
Well, yeah, and it's one thing that honestly hasn't been revisited in science fiction until honestly very recently. And even now, the concept, so there's a whole subgenre of Afrofuturism, which is fan-freaking-tastic. I suggest finding books and reading it. It's great.
I know Ari has some recommendations because Ari reads a lot of books, so I should get Ari's recommendations on some of the books that she's read about.
Yeah, there's some really good, and it's because they're, it definitely fights against that idea that the exceptionalism only exists in the West, and that the only people who are going to accomplish these scientifically astounding,
Jory LaForge, also from Africa.
Yep. So
I don't think I knew that.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, his mom was in Starfleet, so he was Starfleet kid, but I think he was born in Africa.
So how about this? Since we got a little bit of time left, why I would love to hear, because you are a small crew, as Maquis crews usually are. Could you? I know the other.
Yes.
I know the other
Jordy
cast are
LaForge
here.
was born in Mogadishu, Somalia.
Who?
Jordy LaForge, it says, was
Jordy,
born
yeah.
February 16th, 2033 in Mogadishu, Somalia, of the African Confederation on Earth.
Cool.
I love me some Jordy LaForge, my friends.
Me too.
Fun fact: Brent Spiner graduated from the same high school I did. It's irrelevant, but I just
Brent
wanted to
Spiner is from Houston.
Yep.
Uh-huh. Fun fact.
The Quaid brothers also went there.
Oh, we only claim one of those.
So the three of them, this is a completely sidetrack thing. The three of them together were working their summers at Astroworld and convinced Astroworld to let them put on a theatrical show that became the Wild West street show that many people from Houston may recall from their youth or not so youth. That was if you saw it back when it first started, that was the Quaid brothers and Brent Spiner. At any rate, tell me about your crew a little bit.
Ollie, do you want to talk about Teslin a little bit? And
Sure.
And I can.
Well, and in relation, because
yeah,
it's kind of interesting how everybody comes together.
The fun thing about Teslin is he is Starfleet. He literally he is fresh off the ship, Starfleet, and he's from an old established Federation colony originally. He joined Starfleet because that was what it was to do. He's very much he goes along the ladder because that is what this is what I'm supposed to do in life. And he's thrown in with the Maquis not because he personally has a history with them, but because Kor, his symbiont, has a history through Kor's previous host. And Kor only has one previous host. And while it's highly unusual for Trill to do this because it's not what's supposed to happen, Kor is a very young symbiont and is breaking the rules. Whereas Teslin is not a rule breaker. And so Kor has a history with the Maquis that, she honestly was a teacher who became a sniper. And when Kor had to go off planet with Teslin, bonded with Teslin and said, no, our people still need us. And Teslin, they're going, it's not my people. So you've got a very conflicted doctor. And Teslin is probably both my most difficult character to embody, as well as one of I am quickly falling in love with him. It takes me a few episodes. No, I'm in love with Teslin.
How, being fresh off the ship and Federation, how are the more long-term Maquis aboard the Ren reacting to
he gets called Starfleet.
Oh yeah, that's his nickname.
That's his new nickname. It's just called Starfleet. People will not even bother to call him by his actual name.
And I love
They're
that.
just like, Starfleet, come here.
Right. I love that you instantly get this feel of
like, because he had his pressed slacks. He thought he could get away with just changing his shirt and his shoes. But Sarah, do you want to go in a little bit?
Well, I can talk a little bit about the NPCs. I don't want to talk about the PCs so much because I'm not embodying those characters of Umbara Isler.
Someone watching though.
Yeah. So we've got a brother and sister-in-law duo of Tok, son of Korra, Umbara Tok, son of Korath, and Umbara Isler. If you guys don't know about Bajorans have their family name first and their given name second. So that's why Tok's name is Umbara Tok. son of Korath, because he has his husband's family name, Umbara, and his Klingon designation, son of Korath. So his husband, whose name was Ren, I think it was what they spelled it Ren, is Eiler's brother, and they're very much so they created that relationship. Aryan Pax created that relationship very quickly, and then we have June Clark, who's from one of these colonies in the demilitarized zone. This is where she's from. She's one of those people that has lived in a frontier colony and is got that frontier engineer kind of. She didn't grow up in the Federation with all of these really nice things. They had hand-me-down stuff from two generations ago that she had to make work on these things. And it's very much not only our Talk and Eiler actual family, but there's a very much a found family kind of thing that was there from the beginning. So that's how, and then we've got Kor, who Anzi was part of this found family. And then how do we put somebody that is Kor but isn't Kor back in? How does Anzi fit back into this found family? Because she was a matriarchal figure beforehand. Kor was a matriarchal figure. And now we have this young guy who's young and skinny and thin. And they're like, no, not the same, but he's not going to be the same position she was in. Like, it's a whole, kind of thing. Like, how do you figure that out? I created 4 NPCs for the crew for this campaign. 2 of whom, actually, one of whom the only person you've met so far is the commander. I hazard to even say captain, because the way that I see the Maquis is they don't have as much of a strict hierarchy as the Federation. They have cells.
Someone called her captain.
Yeah. So they have cells. So she's the person who's technically the captain of the ship, but they don't have rank and insignia like Starfleet, She's the person who's in charge. So commander. And she is a Vulcan. She is very much a Vulcan. She's a rough and tumble Vulcan, but she has her own reasons for why she's a part of the Maquis. And logic does come up in this. And then there's the other 3 NPCs that are introduced, and they all have different reasons for why they've joined the Maquis. Fetis and Cruz and Jal all have their own reasons for why they are members of the Maquis and not state. Some of them grew up on Federation planets or grew up in the Federation, or Fetis grew up on Risa. Rysian, that's Federation planet. Talon grew up on Vulcan. It's one of those things where it's like, so they not only are from like Federation colonies, are from like main big planets, and they all have their own reasons for joining the Maquis and kind of doing the thing that they're doing now in this Maquis raider, where they're stealing supplies and doing all that good stuff. Yeah, I will tell you, out of the 4 NPCs that I've created, Amelie can probably guarantee you that they know this already, that Cruz is my favorite. Cruz is, I'm really proud of Cruz. I really like Cruz a lot.
I like
adorable. And
to meet everybody.
One thing that did get, I think that didn't get included in the recording, is that Cruz rubbed Talk the wrong way by a lot. And so, and then having between that interaction, then bringing Talk around to, okay, no, I guess I can get along with you, but don't fuck up again, that sort of thing.
Well,
and
also
finding
the Talk going, is he flirting with me?
Yeah.
Or are they flirting with me? And everybody's like, I don't know. So yeah, Cruz is going to be a fun character to play.
Awesome.
For me.
And I'm excited
I am looking forward to
get
it.
to know Joel a little bit more.
Yeah, he's just Joel. It's just
Joel, excuse me.
Yeah, just a chubby, nerdy dude. He just really likes his plants, you guys. He just really likes his plants. He wants to figure out how to grow plants better in space. That's really all he wants to do.
All right, Space Neville Longbottom. Got it.
Yep, Space Neville Longbottom.
Supports this idea as long as the plants are helping him with figuring out, okay, I'm short on, this supply. You have a plant that can help me, right?
And Joel will just be like, we'll find out.
I love it. All right, so everybody, that was fun.
Yay, Star Trek.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here like,
Annika's having a day. Also, is not as into Star Trek as others.
I've never watched any of it.
Hey, that's okay.
Watch party, popcorn watch party. That's what I heard.
And also, before we leave, I have to say this because this is really important. I will say, everybody that has talked to me, ever heard me talk about Star Trek, I will talk about my endearing love for Alexander Siddig, or Siddig Fladil, whatever he is being called at the particular moment, because I first remember watching him when I was like 9 years old, when Deep Space Nine first came out, and I said, oh my god, he's beautiful. And I still have a crush on him. Like, aww. Endearing. Like earliest part of like Sarah's tiny little baby budding sexual development was going, that man is beautiful, and still like now going, yep, still beautiful. Like, and so I was obsessed with Dr. Bashir, like whole thing. It was just like, so it's another reason why. And I will also say that Kira and Dax helped me become a woman, because they were two such very different pillars of femininity and womanhood, but they were neither one wrong or neither one exactly right. So anyway, that's one reason why I love
Deep Space Nine. A whole other topic.
Yeah, I love Deep Space Nine, you guys, so much.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Yes.
And we'll see you on the next, the OOC.
Live long and prosper. Peace and long life. That's how you respond.